Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from Cardswire.com, USA Today's NFL Wire site covering the Arizona Cardinals. And it's an opponent preview. We haven't had one of these in a couple of weeks, but Andrew Harbaugh, the managing editor over at Bucs Wire, as the Cardinals take on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Sunday afternoon at Raymond James Stadium out in Tampa, 1 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Arizona time. And we'll get double content with this week, one on the show, one on the site, as Andrew and I will be going behind enemy lines with each other here in the next day or two. The next day, probably today, tomorrow. And we'll get the written version of this, but now we get a yap about the team. So Andrew, welcome to the show. You joined us in the off season to talk about the Bucs, and you're back. Tell us how things have been.
Not anything like I thought they would be. That's for sure. I don't think any Bucs fans really thought, I've talked a lot at length about the 2024 injury bug and the Bucs. And I think that big, scary boogeyman got replaced by an even bigger and scarier boogeyman, because it's just, it's insane. And Jess, we have a guy who does the injury graphics for us. When Baker got hurt last week, I said, hey, one of the few players I don't already have an injury graphic for. So, I've been having to reuse stuff because the same people just keep getting hurt week to week. So, it's been a very long, hard week. And I joke, you said I cover the Bucs obviously for USA Today. I also cover the Vikings. And I said my years of Browns fandom has prepared me to cover a weekend of Max Brosmer and Teddy Bridgewater potentially. So I'm ready for elite quarterback play.
Oh man, hey! But the Bucs are sitting pretty all right. They're 6-5. They lead the NFC South. Now, granted that NFC South is very winnable, but the Bucs, they're surviving the injuries. Their season so far, they've lost their three straight for the last 5. But here are the losses that the Bucs have had this year, and it's not chump change. They've lost to the Eagles, the defending champions. They lost to the Lions, and while the Lions are quote unquote down in a tough NFC North, they're still one of the better teams in the NFC. They lost to the Patriots, hottest team in the freaking NFL right now. The Bills, Super Bowl contender, and the Rams, who might be the best team in the NFL right now. What has this season been like in terms of on-field play for the Bucs?
It's been a real mixed bag, and I'll lead off with the defense, where coming into the draft, linebacker was seen as a big need, and a lot of people were mocking Jahad Campbell to him, and maybe they were going to get an edge rusher, and they ultimately went with the luxury pick in Emeka Egbuka, which has paid off handsomely. Especially considering the injuries Mike Evans has had, and Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan. Without Egbuka, you're looking at Sterling Shepard being your wide receiver 1 for most of the year. And
not reliable. Not reliable.
And Kez Johnson quietly has 5 touchdowns as a 7th-round pick and is doing very well. But again, you don't want him as your wide receiver 2. So it worked out in that sense. But Bucs fans have been forced to watch Levante David go from being a 34-year-old all-pro contender to he's 35 now, and I don't want him anywhere near the middle of the field in coverage or run defense or anything. So age has really hit him hard. And the rest of the defense, it's kind of like that. He was the core, and it's kind of just spread out. Secondary is not able to cover very well. Jamel Dean's been hurt. Zion McCollum got a big extension right before the year, and he's not looking very good. Tyke Smith and Antoine Winfield at safety have been nice, but defense has been the real killer, where they were never great last year, but they weren't this bad. And Baker's been having to play a lot of hero ball, and I think folks finally caught up to that as well. He started out, was on an MVP pace, and things have really, really slowed down on the offense as well. I think Bucky Irving being out's affected things. I like Rachaad White. I joked this past week, actually. I think he's a free agent. I think he'd be a perfect fit for the Cardinals next year if they decide to go another way other than James Conner. But yeah, just Bucky brought an explosiveness that they had. They hadn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since the now, unfortunately, Doug Martin, who passed. That was in 2014. So he brought something they hadn't had in over 10 years. So injuries, I think, are an easy cop-out, but like the play in general is just not what it should be. And like you said, the losses are all to playoff teams, Super Bowl contenders, but they've got to win those games at the same time. And in several of those games, they were in a position to win. And then it's just special teams miscues, a fumble here, an interception there. Like there's just not a lot of good execution across the board right now.
So what's the feeling about Todd Bowles these days as head coach?
Personally, I'm ready to move on from him. I think it's one of those things, and I compared it ironically to a situation I think Bucs fans are used to is Tony Dungy was winning a lot with the Bucs, but he wasn't able to be the guy who got them over the hump. The message kind of got stale, I think. And obviously he went and had great success with the Colts, so it worked out for him. But I think it's sort of that same light where special teams has been a disaster for weeks. There's no changes there. The defense, which is what he's supposed to be like the anchor of in terms of coaching, has looked horrific at times. Even blitzing, like that's been what he's known for, is to bring pressure and just be in your face nonstop and make quarterbacks make mistakes. But I don't know if offenses are just figuring it out or the blocking is getting better or what the deal is, but the pressure is not there in recent weeks. And I think they should move on from him. The Glazer family who owns the Bucs is very, very calm and patient. So is Jason Light. So we'll see how that goes. But I think for now, it's just we've got to ride out the storm with the guy that has won us 3 straight division titles. And albeit it's the NFC South, it's not like it's the NFC East and you win 3 times. There's a quality there between the division wins.
That's like Ron Rivera. I mean, when he got hired by Washington, he's like, we won 4 straight NFC South. That you were under 500 for 2 of those. So
yeah, so you're talking about Ron Rivera, the general manager of the Cal Bears now. So we know how that worked out for him in those division titles, obviously in Washington. Maybe Todd Bowles has a career in college football GM. But anyway, yeah, I think that it's just the message is stale. I think he's figured out, and I think he could be a great coordinator. I don't know if he's the guy to take this team to the next level. And like they're extending a lot of players. They have a good core there. Something's got to give at some point. I don't see it getting better anytime soon with Bowles.
I mean, like if they go on like they've been and they win the division, can you, like, it's one of those things, you go into the playoffs, can you really move on from him? Like it's that I know probably there'll be people who will be okay with that, but that's a weird look. Like you're winning divisions and then you're like, but no.
Yeah, and so like let's say they win the NFC South. They're probably going to play a very good NFC wildcard team. And they did last year where they lost to the Commanders in the first round at home. I don't know what the playoff picture looks like right now. I think it's I think I saw they were matched up maybe with Seattle or something like
that's
that.
what it looks like right now.
I would think Seattle mops the floor with them. I know they beat Seattle earlier this year, but like that version of the Bucs early on was riding such a high, it felt like, because they started the year 5-1. And that was like their big win. And then just everything kind of fell from the wayside. But let's say they play the Seahawks and Todd Bowles loses that game. Yeah, he would have won 4 straight division titles, but he'd be 1-4 in the playoffs. So again, like we said, Ron Rivera could win all those division titles. I don't think the Commanders were doing very well in the playoffs as a result. I think the Bucs are kind of in the same boat with, no pun intended, with Todd Bowles.
Best part of the offense, best part of the defense. What have they been so far this year?
The best part of the offense has been, man, it's funny. A low-hanging fruit would be Baker Mayfield, but I would say it's really been the flexibility of that offensive line. Like they've had more combinations than I can ever recall watching for any team, whether I root for the team and pros, college, or I just I'm having to watch them for this. Like it started out the year, Graham Barton moved from center to left tackle, and they still had success. And then Tristan Wirfs comes back, and Barton moves back to center, and everything goes back hunky dory there. And then Cody Mock tears up his knee. They have to put in a backup guard there. And then Ben Bredesen misses time. They put a backup guard at right guard. And then the backup guard gets hurt, and they have to sign Michael Jordan off the street. Not the all-time GOAT one either, which I'm so tired of that joke on broadcast. I love that Michael Jordan, he's serviceable at this point. He's not great for the Bucs. But if I hear one more, the North Carolina one, no, the Ohio State, I'm so tired of the Michael Jordan jokes on broadcast. Over under, if you want to talk about props, 2.5, I would say, is where we're at with those, at least a safe one. But they just have this next man up mentality, and it's worked all year. And getting both their bookend tackles back and having Barton in the middle has really helped. And the guard play has not been fantastic, like I said, but it's been serviceable. And I think that's been the one big bright spot where not a lot of people will highlight it, but I can appreciate that the GM is supposed to build a roster that can sustain an NFL season. And part of that is having the depth to handle all these injuries. And while I talked about how they're losing a whole bunch and there's this and that suffering, the offensive line has done very well despite everything that's been thrown at them.
And defensively, I see Yaya Diaby lead the team with 5 sacks. Tyke Smith, who's broken up an absurd amount of passes, 12 pass breakups. You've got Jamel Dean with 3 picks and a touchdown. Antoine Winfield having a good year. What's been the highlight defensively, even among kind of some of the struggles? Because obviously the defense hasn't been the best part of the team this year.
Yeah, I mean, Tyke Smith is playing at an insane level. Like, he's so much fun to watch. And it's funny how Antoine Winfield Jr. hasn't had like that tag team partner on the back end of the defense. And like, because Smith has played so well, I feel like no one's talked about Winfield as much, which I think he's perfectly happy with because he's had to be Superman for that defense for several years now. But that being said, on top of Tyke, rookie cornerback who's really been in the nickel spot, Jacob Parrish, he's not going to get it, but I think he should be in the top 3 at least for defensive rookie of the year at this point. Like he's playing all over the place. I think he's the only rookie with, I think I saw he was like the only rookie with so many sacks, but also so many forced fumbles and an interception. Like he's doing it all for the Bucs defense as well. So he's been a real nice find. It's funny, Benjamin Morrison got taken in the 2nd round, and he's kind of just still been not great, but he's also been kind of dealing with hamstring stuff this year. But Jacob Parrish, 3rd round pick, has been fantastic. Like, just if you would have do a redraft, I think he gets 1st round discussion maybe. Some of your Cardinals, obviously, they took Will Johnson, and I think Will Johnson's been okay, but Parrish, like I said, has just been phenomenal. So him and Tyke Smith getting to watch them every week has been a lot of fun in the secondary.
Coming up next on the Rise of Seaward podcast of SRF Cardinals Talk on the Web, let's move on and talk about the matchups. What are the keys of this game? What are the important matchups that we're going to be looking for? That's coming up next on Rise of Seaward. We're back on the Rise of Seaward podcast of SRF Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking to Andrew Harbaugh, managing editor over at the Bucs Wire, the sister site from the USA Today, SM Sports Media Group. This game, week 13, 1 p.m., Cardinals-Bucs. Now, obviously, we don't know whether it's going to be Baker or Teddy Bridgewater quarterback. From what I understand, that they're preparing Bridgewater, leaving the door open for Baker. Baker didn't practice Wednesday, was limited on Thursday. How do you see this team? What is going to be different with how the offense is run if Teddy's playing as opposed to Baker?
The second half of the game against the Rams was some of the worst football I've watched this year. And obviously going against the Rams defense, it's tough for someone who has the game manager style like Bridgewater to kind of really break through there. But it was one of those things where I think once they knew Bridgewater was in, they were able to just really pressure him, and they knew the running game was going to be that much more effective because of the way the score was. And I don't know if the Cardinals maybe make it easier or not if it's Bridgewater, but I don't have a lot of faith in Bridgewater. Like, you need to be able to make plays at the quarterback position. Like, I've written this in mocks. Like, I keep giving them like a live arm quarterback on day 3 of the draft because they need someone with a little bit more of an electric arm, someone who can be a little bit more of a gunslinger. And like, give me turnovers with that. That's fine. If you throw a pick or two at this point as a backup, I really don't care. But like, when your average depth of throw is going to be something like 1.2 yards, you're not going to win games like that.
Well, in getting Bucky back, seemingly getting Bucky back this week will help that offense immensely. Bridgewater will have had the full week of the game plan around him, but it also helps the Cardinals defense is not good. And so the inability the Cardinals have to lower the impact of the running backs against them. They I think allowed 150 yards combined to the Seattle running backs. Christian McCaffrey scored 3 touchdowns. Josh Jacobs scored a pair of touchdowns against them. Travis Etienne had 60 yards of offense on the very first drive. He had 116 yards of offense during the game, and so will this be a heavy Bucky game, Bucky Irving game, or because it's his first game back, are they going to use Rachaad White still? And even still, that skill set that Rachaad White has will hurt the Cardinals.
I think they're going to use all 3 of their guys, Sean Tucker included, which I swear to whoever you choose to pray to, we're going to talk to at this point. Sean Tucker last year was at one point FedEx Ground Player of the Week. And then the amount of yards he had in the one game last week, I think it was week 7 or 9 against the Saints. Like, that's what he had the rest of the season combined. Like, they just quit using him. And so Sean Tucker in 2025 has a big game against the Bills. They lose the game, but he has a big game against the Bills. And then they're like, oh, we're going to use him more. We're going to install him more. No, they haven't. But I think Josh Grizzard, who was talking about it this week, Bucky's going to be on a bit of a snap count the same way Chris Godwin was last week, excuse me. That's how long the season has felt. And I think that's going to make them use all 3 guys. And I think, again, Sean Tucker is very explosive. I think I still don't understand how he went undrafted in the year he came out, but I think a combination of Tucker, White, and Bucky is going to be what they really rely on, especially if Bridgewater is in a quarterback. Control time possession, take the pressure off him to make those plays, like I said, he can't make. And I think that's going to be the lean on, especially like you talked about, the Cardinals' run defense is not up to par, it seems, based on past performances they've given up. So I definitely think the running game is going to be a part of it. I just don't know how much of it's going to be on Bucky Irving's shoulder, so to speak.
What important matchups do you see? What areas do you expect either areas or player matchups do you like for this game?
If Baker plays, I like him against the secondary of the Cardinals, but I'll preview this with him not being in there. So, like, again, I think, not to be a dead horse here, we talked about the running backs, I think match up very, very well against Cardinals defense. But to give the Cardinals a little bit of leeway, I think with Bridgewater, ironically, I think the secondary matches up well for him because they're not going to be pushing the ball deep down the field. It's going to be a lot of line of scrimmage, middle of the field work, and I think they can kind of have an easier time covering that versus if you have like Buka stretching down the field, or Tez or Cameron Johnson. I think that's where they would get caught up with Mayfield, but because Bridgewater is going to be in there, I think it's going to be, you go from covering the whole field to just 2/3 of it, and I think that helps them out a lot in that sense. So I think I've written this a lot this week. I think for being a 3-win team, I think they very easily could be a 4-win team. The Cardinals could be at the end of the week. And we'll talk about that later. I won't highlight it too much now, but I think this is a trap game for the Bucs because they've got a really tough schedule the rest of the way. And I think they're going to be really overlooking things, and they're going to be really thinking, okay, well, even if we've got Bridgewater, we're going to be okay. And I just don't know if that's going to be the fact for them at this point.
Coming up next on the Rest of Your podcast, Best Ever Cardinals Talk and Web. Let's do the next part. Let's talk picks, predictions, and more. That's coming up next on Rest of Red. We're back on the Rise of Sierra podcast. Best our Cardinals talk of the web. Now it's the point of the show where we talk about what we think is going to happen. The Bucs are 3-point favorites. Although, and if I kind of break things down, that the public is loving the Bucs. 85% of the money line is backing Tampa. 76% of the spread bets back Tampa. I believe on the NFL YouTube channel, I think on their preview video, I think 9 of the 10 panelists picked the Bucs to win. There's not like the way the Cardinals have been playing. They are 1-11, 2-11, I believe, in their last 13 games. Well, I think 2-11 without Kyler Murray starting since Jonathan Yannick took over. And those 2 wins are against the Dallas Cowboys. Jacoby Brissett is 2-9 in his last 11 starts. And while some of the metrics, some of the volume numbers look better with Brissett, the results have been no different. In fact, they went from going, 2-3, having lost 3 straight games by 3 points or less, to have lost, to have lost their next 5 out of the last 6 games with the best differential 3 points. They lost by 19. They lost by 22. They lost by 4. They lost by 4, and somehow the Cowboys mismanaged their game to lose to the Cardinals in a wild world. So how do you see this game playing out? I'm going to assume that it is going to be Teddy, and even if it's Baker's not going to be 100%. Which leads me to believe, we know the type of player Baker is. Now, interesting fact. Baker has never beaten the Cardinals. He's 0-3 against them. Though, granted, that is all 3 of those times have come against Kyler Murray, his good buddy. So that unfortunately, if Baker plays, we're missing that matchup. The Baker versus Kyler, the close friends dating back to college.
Yeah, and I'll say too, just a quick rant, because I hadn't gotten to talk about this yet anywhere else. I don't know if you watched the Bucs against the Rams last week, but for Bowles to keep him in to throw a deep ball, only for him to fall on his injured shoulder at the end of the first half.
That play, oh my gosh!
I'm like, I put it out there. I would, because he was like, well, when you got time on the clock, you ought to take a chance. I would love to know how many times in his coaching career that he had the ball at the opposite 25 and thought, oh, you know what, we're just going to take a shot at it and not kneel it, not run it. I can't. Anyway, yes, no, it is a shame that we're not going to get the Murray Baker matchup, because again, the Oklahoma Heisman run that Lincoln Riley had before he left for USC with those guys was great. Yeah, I said earlier, I think it's a bit of a trap game for them, where a lot of the numbers you put out there makes me think, oh God, maybe the Bucs really do have this in the bag. But I also think that's part of the trap, so to speak. And I think Brissett, the way he has been able to just get the ball out quickly, I think that's something, like I talked about, the Bucs, especially with their linebacker play. Once guys get outside the numbers on offense, like the little dink and dunk passes and the stuff across the middle, like the Cardinals don't have to create rocket science or even rocket fuel at this point to get the best of this Bucs defense in the version it is. Like, I hyped up Jacob Parrish and the secondary and the safeties, but that middle of the field is where it's the biggest problem, and like how they're able to get out to guys. So I feel like it's a perfect storm where the Cardinals are owed one at this point, versus I don't see the Bucs getting better. Now, if Baker plays, yeah, but like I said, I don't think that's going to happen at this point. Like, he even talked about where he knows the rough stretch of the season's coming up. Like, two of their last 3 games were against the Panthers, which arguably can come down to the division. And then after the Cardinals, it's all but one game is a division game in general. So you've got the Dolphins in there, but I think they're looking long-term with Baker. And because of that, I think between Teddy's lack of playmaking ability, being able to focus on the run defense, like all those teams you mentioned, like the Packers and the Seahawks, they still had a passing dynamic that you had to account for, which let you not stack the box against them. I think the Cardinals will be able to stack the box. I think the Bucs defense is going to struggle again, and I think it's a close one. but I could see the Cardinals pulling away with it. Like I think it'd be like maybe it comes down to a field goal, last second thing, but I think the storm that the Bucs are dealing with at this point is just a lot to overcome, and coaching is not digging them out of it at this point.
And personally, with the spread right at 3 points, I'm like, that feels like the perfect spot for it. There's not, I can't in good faith predict a Cardinals win on the road, 1 p.m., even against a division leader, even with a backup quarterback, because the Cardinals have a backup quarterback of their own. They find new ways to win. Like here's I don't know if you saw this from last week, that in that loss to the Jaguars on Sunday, they did something that no other team this century has done, and that's lose a game while having a +4 turnover differential. +4 turnover. They scored a defensive touchdown, didn't turn the ball over, and still lost the game. So the Cardinals are finding new comical ways. Like that was arguably their best defensive performance, and they still gave up 27 points.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I mean, though. Like, if you're able to do that against former Bucs offensive coordinator Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, like I would think you're able to replicate that against, like, the play calling of Josh Grizzard has not been even in the same stratosphere as what Liam Cohen had for the Bucs last year. And I think that Bridgewater, like I said, is just so much more attainable in terms of forcing turnovers, containing within a box. I obviously didn't watch the Jaguars-Cardinals game that much, but I did see that number. And yeah, I just, like I said, I just feel like it's a perfect storm. Like I said, guards down, you're at home, coming off the holiday, you're like, okay, this is going to be our win, and then we play the Saints next week, which is always a barn burner and a tough game for the Bucs. Like I said, I think there's too much that's just not going their way at this point, and obviously it's not going the way of the Cardinals either when you have 3 wins. But I think somebody's got to get the bone here, and I don't think it's going to be the Bucs.
I'm predicting, and so it's 24-20 Bucs. With the total set at 44, I'd have to adjust that to either take under 44.5 or go over 43.5. But I think the odds makers have the line right about the right spot. I wish there was a hook, because they have it at an even 3 and an even 44 for the spread and the total. And in terms of player performance, obviously it's tough to we don't know who's playing at quarterback, but if we're looking at total rushing yards, they've got Bucky Irving at 40.5 and Rachaad White at 20.5. What do you like in terms of those? Honestly, I'm taking the over on both, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say both of those I'd be hitting the over on as well. I think, again, I don't, if Bridgewater's the guy, I don't think they're going to want him having the ball in his hand too much to make plays. I think they're really going to rely on the running backs there. Like I said, I think Bucky, even on a limited snap count, can get 40 yards. Like, even if they give him 10, 12 touches, I think that's attainable. And at that point, Rachaad White's clearly going to have enough touches to come up with 20 yards, you would hope. So, yeah, I think both of those being over is actually pretty – you hate to use the 4-letter word safe, but because there's none of that in this. But, yeah, I think those are both attainable.
And for receiving, the only props up for receiving are Ibuka, Otten, and Bucky. 61.5 yards for Ibuka, 33.5 for Otten, 12.5 for Bucky. What do you like on those?
This is so depressing. I don't like any of them. Like, Otten is a real. So, I mean, Bucky, I don't think they're going to want to exacerbate his workload with receptions. Yeah. I think they leave that to White and Tucker. So that's that explanation. Ibuka, I think, had 48 yards last week, and that was on, I think, 10 plus targets, and that was obviously with Bridgewater being in there. Good radio here. I'm trying to kill time as I double check that, but I think that 8 targets. I was close to 10. Yeah. He had 32 yards. So it was even worse than I said. Yeah. 3 receptions on 8 targets for 32 yards. And that was with Bridgewater obviously playing the whole second half. So I don't like that one either. But as far as Otton goes, he's become a really big safety valve for the offense. And that being said, I believe he's either last or second to last in receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns for all starting tight ends. So he's
kind of the opposite of Trey McBride, who's doing it all this
year.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's funny because I think Cade Otton's going to get a big extension from the Bucs despite this year he's having. Because he does more than just receiving at this point, which doesn't show up and doesn't help bettors. But yeah, if Baker were there, I would think that 30 is attainable because Baker really likes going to him on third downs, like 5+ yards. We'll pepper him with targets that way. And then just completely forgets about him in the red zone. Whereas I think Bridgewater's just, I don't know what the connection's going to be there. So I would just stay away from all of it, to be honest.
And awesome. So with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise Up Secret podcast, the best hour Cardinals talk on the web. That's Andrew Harbaugh over at the Bucs Wire. You can find his stuff over there at the Bucs Wire. You can find it talking about the Vikings as well. Andrew, where else? I kind of get the feeling you have a lot of pans on the stove right now.
I do. Not all of them are football related, of course, and then we don't need to talk about all those. But yeah, you can find me on at Andrew NFL on Twitter. It's funny. I told myself at the beginning of November I was going to hold off on draft stuff, and then both the Vikings and Bucs decided to fall off a cliff, and I'm like, okay, December is going to be the start of draft stuff. So, yeah, we're going to have draft stuff popping up on the timeline there. Bucs site. I do mock drafts, 2 of them every week. One for just the teams and one for the whole division. So NFC North, NFC South. Obviously, doesn't help Cardinals fans directly, but I joke, if you want to be the best fan you can be, you've got to know what every other team's doing. So that's my plug for all the other draft content. So lots to do on both those. So, but I appreciate the plug and being here.
All right. Well, that wraps that up. Seth and I will be back next week to talk about the Cardinals-Bucs reaction and more as the Cardinals will take on the Rams next week. But until then, that's Andrew Harbaugh. I'm Jess Root. Thanks for listening as always. We'll be back again soon.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up, See Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be red, see red, and of course, Rise Up, See Red.
Roll!